This is a timely one. What's the Jets equivalent to the Luka Doncic nuclear missile trade? I mean, it's sad, but isn't it like losing Revis ultimately to the Patriots and he wins the
Yeah.
Super Bowl with the Patriots? It wasn't a direct trade, so it's not a one-to-one comparison. And I tell you, in some ways, it would be like trading Garrett Wilson for pennies on the dollars this offseason, and he goes and becomes the next Justin Jefferson somewhere else. But we've kind of lived through our version of this. Like, Revis is the best pure football player in Jets history, and he won a fucking Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. And as you can tell, that still bothers me.
No, I think that's probably the worst moment of me being a sports fan that didn't directly impact one of my teams, right? Like, it wasn't like the Mets losing the World Series to the Royals, the Rangers losing the Stanley Cup to the Kings. It was that my favorite player of all time, who I still am convinced this day hated New England. It's so interesting to see like Revis, and I could be totally wrong here. I would just ask him directly if like ever had the chance. I don't really think he loved it there. It was just kind of a necessary means to an end, winning a Super Bowl. Because his Twitter, at least, it seems like he associates with the Jets more often, which is just fascinating, which is good. I have actually like really put that out of my brain that Revis won a Super Bowl with New England. It was, like I said, it was the worst sports fandom moment I've had that didn't directly impact any team I root for.
Brutal. All right, I'll give you one more Ghost to Manish. We'll save the rest for another time, including some questions about who could bench more between Will and Connor, which I'll let them sort out the next time we have them both on a pod together.
Will's a little bigger than me. Just a little bit.
He's got the height, definitely. He's even taller than me, which makes me... we can see us all on the live show. You can have the side-by-sides of the height.
Will played tight end in college. I played lacrosse. There's a difference in body types.
Exactly. There it is. Name one random moment in Jets history that you could change. Not something obvious like beating Denver in the AFC Championship game, but more like Berrios catching the ball in Minnesota. So that's a big favorite of Connor and I and how much we hate Berrios for dropping.
We think it changed everything.
It did. I mean, that's actually a great pivot point for episode 2 of Streets of Fire, which will run next Friday. It's the Badlands Roundtable, which is like 4 hours of us just talking about that season. So you'll see more about the Berrios catch in that one. For me, the first thing that clicked in my brain when I read this one was the Kembrell Tompkins like drop / catch against Buffalo, just because that year was fun, and it would have been fun to see them, even if they lost in the AFC Championship game, whatever, just like get in the playoffs with Brandon Marshall and Decker. And it's the last like recent memory season that was like enjoyable. Like, I think a lot of people forget how fun that season was. They beat the Giants in overtime. They beat the Pats in overtime. They had like they barely beat Dallas, ironically, thanks to a Kembrell Tompkins catch in primetime. Like all these fun wins down the stretch, and it's a very shitty way for it to end. I'll tell you what maybe the more obvious one is what if Eric Smith tackles Victor Cruz or gets there half a second early?
Wow.
Because then the Jets probably make the playoffs for the third year in a row. Maybe they make another ridiculous run with Rex and Sanchez, because that in many ways that 2011 team was just as good as the 2010 team. They just didn't get hot at the right time or didn't get a chance to get in the tournament. And the Giants don't win the Super Bowl. So I was at that game. It was absolutely crushing. It set the stage for this entire playoff drought. The only positive, it's the only reason we have this podcast probably. But that's where I go. Is there anything else that comes to your mind?
I'm trying to think of draft scenarios that kind of changed everything. It's hard. I'd have to really dig through like very specific
Matt
moments.
Ryan instead of Vernon Golston, wasn't that the years where they like synced up? Like if they would have picked a slightly higher?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'll pull up the 2006 draft.
Vernon.
Yeah, Vernon is an interesting one because they drafted so well around that pick, like the years around it, that you look at it and go, man, they got nothing out of him. So 2006 was the brick draft. So Big Vern had to be 2007, right?
Yeah. Sixth overall pick.
He was the 6th overall pick in a draft that, this one is like pretty actually, no. He was 2008. The Jets took Revis in 2007. I should never forget that. Yeah. 2008 was Golston. So this draft, Golston's taken 6th overall. Matt Ryan's taken 3rd overall, which is obviously problematic.
And I think that's because they won like a meaningless game down the stretch to drop from like 2 to 6 or something.
I'm sure they did. I'll pull that up right now. This is probably the one because it would just change everything. So the 2007 Jets were 4-12, which is very, very
Kellen
bad.
Clemens season.
Yep, that was the Clemens season. I want to see how their schedule played out. Yes, they won. I think I was at this game. Yeah, I was at this game. They beat the Chiefs 13-10.
Feels
the
right.
last game of the season at home in overtime.
Yeah. It's got all the makings of a classic one we've seen a million times.
Right. So that was a obviously franchise-altering win in a way, because then they take Golston at 6 when Matt Ryan was in this draft. And this draft is kind of amazing because if you look at the first round, there were so many good players. Dwayne Brown is actually in this draft. There's so many good players in this draft, and the Jets just and a couple teams stepped on landmines. Like around Golston, there was a lot of landmines that were bad picks. But yeah, that's a throwback one, I would say.
Deep cut.
Yeah.
All right, two more quick ones, then we wrap. From Mr. Slippery, plans to have a camp day for the Badlands crew come summer. A camp day. Let's see how the live show goes. Let's see if we don't get banned from New York City for taking over a whole bar.
That's and
then we
fun
go
idea.
to a camp day.
So
what do we do in a camp day? Flag football? What, like drinking, grilling?
So I'm assuming he means like actually us all going to training camp. But
I was thinking like camp, like we just get
if we
everyone
had like a
on,
Badlands like camp day of like drinking and playing games, that would be awesome.
Little tug of war, get everything out there.
That would be fun. I have been saying this for years, and I actually really mean it this year, especially like where I live now and I drive a lot. It's just easier, and I will go to training camp for at least one day this summer, hopefully quite a few days. If Mr. Slippery means that, the only problem is that it's not the Jets' fault. It's like an NFL thing now. They don't make it easy for everybody to go to camp anymore. They raffle
it's more
ticket
like a process now. I feel like we could be like, hey, we're getting a 150 ticket block for Badlands.
Right. I remember as a kid,
camp.
you just went.
Yeah.
I was like, you just showed up. Now it's, you're right. There's like certain days that are open to fans, and I would go as media, but I would like to see people. I would like to organize it where a bunch of Badlands listeners get to go, but teams have made it very, very difficult, which is sad because it's a cheap way for kids to go. If we called, hey, can we just bring like 200 Badlands fans to like training camp? I think they would be like, no.
Thank you for calling and asking, but
thanks for asking, but absolutely not.
Yeah. Stay in your bar in Manhattan.
Yes, right, stay away from us.
Last one, long-winded question of how do we think we get the Rodgers news? Either way, so I think if he's staying, it's obviously on McAfee, and it's done in some
He hates the insiders, so it won't be that.
Yep. You'll hear it directly from me. I'll be back for the Jets. I intend to fulfill my contract or something like that. Devontae will be with me.
Finish what we started.
Back in Jet Life Stadium.
AG's going to get this thing right, and it'll be, and Boy Green and all the accounts are tweeting it out, and
emergency pod, and texting you to run out of work, and here we go.
Yep, and it'll be... Although maybe it'll be, if it's before the combine, I'm fine with that. Like I'll actually be chilling for 12 days for the first time in a long time. If it's at the combine, I hope that's not the case because I'm assuming AG and Muji will be there speaking, and you don't want to like kind of have that dumped on them, and then they're at a presser and have to answer. Hopefully, everybody's in line with how this is delivered. Is the point? But with Rodgers, who always has control,
that'd be a good sign of progress. And if he's not coming back, I feel like it's some like long cryptic Josina tweet that is like both sides.
That you have to decipher and
mutually agreed to like go in their separate, wayward, wandering directions, or it'd be like a very long tweet. Like, okay,
over under 2.5 thank yous Jaime gets from Aaron Rodgers.
Jaime, no one gets more public thank yous than Jaime. Salah must have mentioned Jaime over the 6 years like 61 times. It's a process, Ryan.
That's how we started this regime. They're just out there thanking Jaime.
All right.
Woody gets like one mention.
I don't. Woody's got to be.
He owns the team. He signs the fucking checks.
What am I doing? This is my team. I'm the billionaire here.
I'd be furious if especially how billionaires think, where they always want like credit and praise.
It is a funny shit. We got to count. We got to get a Jaime counter on the.
It should be like in the top right of our war room only, and it just stays up all year.
Ticks up.
Yeah, man.
all
And
right,
it doesn't.
well,
It stays
yeah.
up there until he joins the podcast for
I feel
a
like
guest spot.
it's a good assignment for someone in the Discord to track. If Jaime's not in the Discord himself, which he very well may be, who's to say Mr. Slippery isn't Jaime? We don't know.
Well, if he is and he's listening, set up the Badlands Day at training camp.
That'd be great. Meanwhile, my head, I know that the Jets would not allow that to happen at training camp, so my mind went to us renting a campsite in North Jersey.
That's the best part of that. You were thinking of field day. You were like thinking of playing ultimate frisbee and grilling burgers.
Yeah.
Which I love that, but I'm thinking like I think he's talking about training camp, but that seems so unrealistic.
We could put training camp up on the big screen, and we could have some
Jets would never do that with us.
This is good. We needed a war room in between endless amounts of emergency podcasts. I'm jinxing this now. I'm sure like we'll be recording an emergency podcast within 2 or 3 days. If not,
man,
it'll
be on when I'm flying Friday. That's a guarantee.
Yes, there'll be
fails.
plenty of shit on the feed between now and Sunday. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.